healer or breaker, your frequency determines the timeline you shift into. What if I told you that the life you're living right now isn't the only version of your reality, that just one decision, one inner shift, could cause your entire path to unfold in a completely different direction? Not hypothetically, not metaphorically, literally. Every thought, emotion, and energetic frequency you hold doesn't just affect your mood, it broadcasts a signal that locks you into a timeline. And depending on your frequency, you're aligning either with a timeline of healing and expansion or one of disruption and collapse. The question isn't which timeline is better, the question is, what is your soul here to do? Are you a healer or are you a breaker? Before we go further, understand this. Neither path is superior. One is not more evolved than the other. They are both sacred. They are both vital. The healer mends the wounds of the world. The breaker reveals them. Both are agents of transformation. But what defines the path you walk? What determines whether you bring peace or provoke change is the frequency you hold, moment by moment, breath by breath. You're not just creating reality, you're choosing from infinite versions of it by how you resonate.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound spiritual lesson.
Let's drop into something deeper. Frequency isn't just a vibe. It's not just being high energy or low energy. It's not about being happy or sad. Frequency is the total sum of your inner alignment. It's the electromagnetic broadcast of your consciousness. It's shaped by your beliefs, your thoughts, your emotional state, and most importantly, your willingness to be real with yourself. And in this era, timelines are no longer shifting over decades. They're shifting now, fast, visibly. You've probably felt it. The way time bends, the way people are waking up or breaking down, the way some lives seem to accelerate into magic and synchronicity, while others spiral into chaos and loss. That isn't random, it's vibrational, and it's happening because the veils between timelines have thinned, and your soul's true frequency is rising to the surface. But here's the twist no one talks about. This shift, it's not comfortable. For chosen ones, those of us who came into this life already encoded with the mission to guide, disrupt, or heal, this awakening isn't about becoming something new. It's about remembering who you were before the world told you who to be. And that remembrance is a violent act to the ego. The moment you start vibrating at the frequency of truth, everything false begins to collapse. That includes relationships, careers, patterns, identities. Your frequency begins to reject what isn't aligned, not because you're broken, but because you're finally tuned in. So let's talk about these paths. The healer is one who carries the medicine of presence. They hold space, not just with words, but with their entire field. When a healer raises their frequency, they shift into a timeline where their very existence becomes transformational. People are drawn to them not for advice, but for activation. Their calm is contagious. Their energy balances chaos. Their vibration becomes a bridge, pulling others into more stable and heart-centered timelines. But the healer must first heal themselves. They must confront the martyr within, the need to rescue others to feel valuable. When they release that pattern, their frequency becomes sovereign, and that's when their reality begins to shift around them effortlessly. Synchronicities accelerate, support shows up, healing flows like a current. The breaker, on the other hand, holds a different code. They are not here to mend, but to reveal what must be destroyed. Their frequency is that of sacred disruption. They walk into a room and the truth begins to rise. Lies can't stay hidden. Pretenses fall apart. Their energy is catalytic, often misunderstood, but deeply necessary. When a breaker raises their frequency, they shift into timelines where structures begin to crumble and new blueprints emerge. They challenge everything: social norms, old paradigms, even spiritual dogmas. They are not destructive out of bitterness. They are destructive because their soul came to liberate truth through fire. But like the healer, the breaker must refine their energy. If they operate from wounded anger, they align with chaos. But when they rise into conscious disruption, their timeline becomes one of radical transformation and accelerated evolution for themselves and for everyone around them. Now, here's the part that bends reality. You're not fixed in one path forever. Your soul may carry both codes, and depending on your current frequency, you align more with one than the other. You may be a healer in your community, but a breaker in your own lineage. You may be a breaker in systems and a healer in your personal relationships. Your role is fluid, but the frequency is the compass. That's why this conversation is not just spiritual, it's quantum. Your emotions are vibrations. Your choices are tuning forks. Your intentions are levers. And every time you step into integrity with who you really are, beyond conditioning, you jump timelines. Think about it. How many times have you made one decision, just one, from a place of deep alignment, and your entire life started to change within days? That wasn't luck. That was timeline convergence. That was your frequency finally syncing with your mission. So now I ask you, are you living in the timeline that reflects your soul's frequency, or are you stuck in one that mirrors your old wounds? Because here's the truth. We don't attract what we want, we attract what we are. And if you're feeling the call to something more, if you're feeling the friction in your life growing louder, that's not a problem, that's a sign. It means your current frequency is no longer a match for your highest timeline. It means your soul is rising, and it's asking you to listen. The inner shift that splits worlds, choosing between comfort or destiny. There is a moment in every chosen one's life when reality begins to stretch. Not in a subtle way, but in a way you can't ignore. What used to feel like stability starts to feel like a cage. The routines that once brought comfort now echo with emptiness. And people you've known for years, maybe even loved deeply, begin to feel like distant echoes, living in a version of time that no longer matches yours. This is the moment where two worlds begin to form. The timeline of comfort, where everything stays familiar but your soul stagnates, and the timeline of destiny, where nothing is guaranteed but your frequency finally gets to expand. And the only thing that decides which world you shift into is your willingness to choose truth over convenience. That's what no one tells you, that choosing your higher path often begins with loss. Because to truly rise, you must let go of anything you've built from fear. The job you took because it was safe, not because it set your soul on fire. The friendships you've maintained out of history, not harmony. The identity you've clung to so the world wouldn't call you too much. Comfort feels good until you realize it's a spell. And destiny feels like a storm until you realize it's your soul breaking the spell open. This inner shift is invisible to most. It doesn't happen with fanfare. It happens quietly, in the background of your day, in the pause before you say yes to something you don't mean, in the split second where you consider telling the truth instead of staying silent, in the choice to walk away even when your legs are shaking. That's the quantum pivot. That's the fork in the road between who you were and who you're becoming. And that's where timelines begin to split, not out there, but within you. You may not see it immediately, but once you make this choice, reality begins to reshape itself. People fall away, not because you're abandoning them, but because your frequency is no longer compatible with what they reflect. Time starts to move differently. Opportunities show up that match your new vibration. Resistance amplifies temporarily, not to punish you, but to test whether your choice was real. And when you hold the line, when you choose again and again to honor your frequency over your fear, something wild happens. Your external life begins to sync with your internal truth. That's when the old world dissolves and the new one begins. But here's where it gets deeply uncomfortable. You'll be tempted, deeply tempted, to turn back, because the unknown will scare your nervous system. Your mind will scream for certainty. Your ego will long for validation. You'll second-guess the very truth that set you free. That's part of it. That's the test. And not in a karmic punishment sense, but in a cosmic preparation. You're being forged, because the timeline of destiny can't be built with half-truths and smallness. It requires all of you. Your honesty, your pain, your wildness, your knowing, your tears, your raw essence. The breaker in you might need to shatter systems you once found security in. You may feel the urge to burn bridges, end patterns, speak words that make people uncomfortable, not because you want conflict, but because you can no longer betray your inner knowing just to keep the illusion intact. That frequency breaks you out of the old. That's your timeline shifting tool. The healer in you may instead feel called to pause, to soften, to sit in silence and feel the emotions that you once avoided. You begin to nurture your own wounds the way you've always held space for others. You stop saving people and start saving your energy. That frequency builds the bridge to a timeline of restoration and aligned co-creation. So ask yourself right now, and don't flinch when the answer comes, what are you still choosing out of fear that's keeping you stuck in the wrong version of your life? Because that's the anchor. That's the weight that keeps you tethered to a world that your soul has outgrown. It's not about judgment, it's about honesty. This is the point where you reclaim your responsibility. No more waiting for the universe to give you a sign. This is the sign. You feel it in your body, in the ache, in the restlessness, in the quiet voice that keeps saying, "It's time." When you choose your destiny, you'll lose comfort, but you'll gain momentum. You'll lose predictability, but you'll gain alignment. You'll lose the approval of the crowd, but you'll gain communion with your soul. And that's the only thing that's real in a collapsing world. You came here to choose, not just once, but every day, to walk toward the timeline that holds your fullest potential, knowing it will demand more from you than anything you've ever faced, and knowing that your soul is absolutely ready. So here's what I'll leave you with for now. If you already know which timeline you're meant to step into, what's stopping you? And is that reason worth your soul staying asleep another year? Timeline Alchemy: How to Lock into a New Reality Through Daily Frequency Shifts. The biggest mistake we make when it comes to shifting timelines is believing it happens all at once, like flipping a switch or saying the perfect affirmation. But the truth, the deep, raw, transformational truth, is that timelines shift through daily frequency choices. Not dramatic ones, micro ones, quiet ones, the kind you make when no one is watching. The moment you decide to pause before reacting, the moment you breathe through the urge to people please, the moment you sit with discomfort instead of escaping it. These are the keys, the levers, the secret alchemy of chosen ones. Because here's what you need to understand at the quantum level. Your reality is listening to your energy far more than your words. The field around you doesn't respond to what you say you want, it mirrors who you're being. So if you say you want to heal, but you're still vibrating at resentment, you stay in a loop. If you say you want alignment, but keep entertaining people who drain you, you delay the shift. If you say you're ready for purpose, but keep choosing comfort over clarity, you keep attracting situations that match the old identity. The new timeline is already there, it's waiting, but it cannot open to you until you become the version of yourself who belongs there. This is timeline alchemy. You start becoming that version through your frequency, not once, but daily, and that means holding yourself to a different standard, not perfection, but integrity. If your future self, the one living in the timeline of purpose, love, power, and peace, could watch you today, would they recognize you? Would they say, yes, that's me, that's the energy I lived into? Or would they still see hesitation, compromise, energy leaks? Let's make it even more real. Every conversation you have is a portal. Do you leave people feeling more aware, more seen, more free, or do you leave them entangled in the same energetic patterns? Every thought you accept without question wires a frequency into your field. Are those thoughts rooted in truth or in trauma? Every time you scroll, react, distract, or deny, you're making timeline choices. They seem small, but they are rituals. They are signals to the quantum field. This is who I am. This is what I expect. This is what I'll settle for. And your reality will adjust accordingly. Now, the question most people ask is, how do I raise my frequency without getting overwhelmed or burned out? It starts with one core shift: intention before action. When you wake up, don't reach for your phone. Reach for your frequency. Ask yourself, what energy am I anchoring today? Not what am I doing, what am I being? The doing will follow the being. Set your tone like a tuning fork. Before you speak, feel. Before you react, observe. Before you decide, align. Another daily tool, boundaries. Not just with others, but with yourself. Discipline is a frequency. It tells the universe you're serious about your next level. Boundaries aren't walls. They're containers that hold the vibration you've worked so hard to cultivate. Say no more often, not from fear, from clarity, from worth, from the knowing that your timeline cannot hold what your nervous system was never meant to carry. Now this is the part that activates gratitude as frequency locking, but not performative gratitude, embodied, visceral, undeniable gratitude for what's already here. If you can't feel it for the now, you won't hold it in the next. Gratitude isn't spiritual fluff, it's quantum confirmation. It tells the field, I'm already living it. That energy pulls timelines closer like magnets. And remember, this isn't about being high vibe all the time. That's not authentic. Real alchemy includes shadow. You'll still have moments of anger, grief, confusion, but the difference now? You hold them differently. You stop making them wrong. You see them as data, as messengers, as contrast showing you where the alignment is missing and guiding you back. So here's the real question. Are you choosing your frequency like your future depends on it? Because it does. The timeline doesn't just show up. You meet it, you become it. And one day, without warning, you'll realize that the people you're meeting, the opportunities showing up, the peace you feel, none of it is an accident. It's you. The version of you that finally chose to stop waiting and start living at the level your soul has been whispering about for years. The collapse of the false self and the rise of the timeline-aligned you. There comes a moment when the old you begins to unravel, not gently, but completely. Not in a way that leaves you feeling inspired, but in a way that leaves you raw, undone, and exposed. And that moment is sacred, because what you're experiencing is not a breakdown. It's the collapse of the false self. The persona you built to survive, the masks you wore to belong, the roles you played to be accepted, they no longer hold. And as painful as it is to watch those pieces fall away, it is the only way the timeline-aligned version of you can emerge. The false self was built from fear. It whispered that you had to stay small to stay safe, that you had to shrink to be loved, that you had to betray your intuition to be approved of, and for a time it served you. It helped you navigate the systems. It kept you protected. But now that very structure is what's holding you back. The false self is heavy. It's full of outdated frequency. It's aligned to timelines that no longer match your soul's truth. And if you want to shift into the timeline where your purpose, peace, power, and people exist, you must let it die. And when you do, it will feel like grief, because even a prison becomes familiar. Even a mask begins to feel like skin, but underneath all of that is something wild. Something real, something ancient. The real you, the timeline-aligned you, the version of you that doesn't perform, doesn't explain, doesn't dilute. The version of you that doesn't need to manifest, because it is the manifestation. That version of you already exists, and it's not waiting for a better day or more healing. It's waiting for your permission. This is where everything you've learned becomes embodiment. You stop chasing, you stop fixing, you start allowing. You begin to hold yourself with such unwavering presence that anything misaligned naturally falls away. You no longer have to cut things off forcefully. They dissolve on their own. You no longer beg for signs. Life starts speaking through synchronicities. You don't have to prove your worth. You walk into spaces as the embodiment of it. But this only happens when you stop outsourcing your identity. When you stop asking the world to validate your truth. When you realize that every time you betray your frequency to be more palatable, you delay your own expansion. And when you finally say, "No more," the field shifts, reality bends, doors open, not because the world changes, but because you did. The timeline-aligned you is not a fantasy. It's the you who stopped asking for permission to be powerful. It's the you who chose clarity over comfort. It's the you who said, "I would rather be alone in truth than surrounded in illusion." And because of that, everything begins to align, not all at once, but inevitably. So here's the final question, the one that holds all the others inside it. Are you ready to be the version of yourself that your future timeline has already been waiting for? Because that version isn't out there. It's right here, beneath the noise, beneath the stories, beneath the old skin that's ready to be shed. Step into it, and when you do, reality will meet you there.